So everyone watching this video has probably seen or played Fortnite at least once, and you've probably thought to yourself, I wonder which of the seasons in the game are the best and worst. So in this video, I'm going to be making a ranking every Fortnite season, going from S tier being the best and F tier being the worst. And before we get into the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. This video is also a part 3, but you don't have to watch the other parts to understand this one. So now let's get into it. First up is Chapter 3, Season 3. So this season was all about being relaxed and taking a break after the 7 and IO war. And the developers apparently took this theme and ran with it because they decided to take a break from good seasons and make this absolutely abysmal season, and starting the infamous Season 3 curse that has lasted to this day. So some of the things this season got wrong is the summer event was literally a nothing burger. All that was added was a reskin flare gun and some ice cream, which was interesting for about one day, and then got absolutely boring, and that took up a good amount of the season. But this season wasn't entirely bad because the reality tree biome was actually pretty good visually, and I did enjoy the slurp mushrooms, and the reality saplings were actually a good concept until they got nerfed to the ground, because they just added nothing for the entirety of the season until they added the Dragon Ball update, which was actually fire. But that update could not save the season, unfortunately, so I'm putting Chapter 3 Season 3 in F tier. Next up is Chapter 3 Season 4, which was definitely an upgrade to Season 3, which isn't really a challenge, but I liked what this season was going for, with the chrome taking over the map and the floating locations. Unfortunately, the chrome biome just wasn't very visually appealing, but the gameplay with the chrome was really fun to play with, and it felt good to use. But this season was the one that killed the storyline indefinitely by just straight up killing the 7 for no reason at all and only leaving the Paradigm alive, but then she just vanished after Fracture, which was the worst live event on all existence, not including the Prelude event. But back to the gameplay. The chrome weapons were fun to use, especially with the damage to upgrade mechanic, which was really unique, and this season also added keys, which were a pretty cool feature. So all in all, the season gets a B tier. After the terrible Fracture event, Chapter 4 Season 1 was introduced and was pretty hyped up by like the entire community, and it absolutely lived up to the hype, adding great features like augments, shockwave hammer, kinetic rocks, and the Excalibur rifle. And all of these things were very fun to mess with, and the map for this chapter was also pretty good, and it was beautiful to look at with the fall biome that had the Citadel and the great looking ice biome. But this season also started this theme of having one season storylines, which was one of my biggest gripes with modern Fortnite. And it also was the start of the live event drought because they got rid of the storyline. And all I'm saying is Epic should really rethink the way that they handle the Fortnite storyline, because what the hell, genuinely, what happened? Why would they pick the metaverse over the story? Like, who decided that? Because they need to be fired. But back to Chapter 4 Season 1. The gameplay in the season was so fun and unique because the actually good augments were just fantastic to play with, and sadly this is the only season that had good augments, because after the season, Epic just apparently got scared to make the game fun, so they nerfed it to the ground. But the gameplay of this season was so fire, and visuals were such a sight, that I just have to put this season in A tier. After that, we moved on to Chapter 4 Season 2, which was pretty on par with Season 1 by improving the map and adding the Japanese biome, which had a traditionally Japanese theme with things like steamy springs and naughty nets, but also having a futuristic theme with Mega City, which was such missed potential because from the outside it looked like such a big location, but then you try to enter a skyscraper and all of the buildings are empty. Like, Epic, stop edging us. But anyways, the gameplay in the season was great, especially the kinetic blade, which was such a good weapon because it was good for fighting but also a good mobility item. And some things that were added in the season were the locked on pistol, the Futurama ray gun, and the Havoc shotgun, which were all good items, and it made the season gameplay pretty fun. And it added back one pumps for the first time in years through the vaults. But it also had the legendary slurp juice, which was so overpowered but it was also pretty fun to use when you had it. But this season also had a very forgettable story, but that's pretty much the case for the rest of Fortnite seasons. So I'm putting Chapter 4 Season 2 in the same tier as Season 1, so A tier. Next up is Chapter 4 Season 3. Do I even have to explain why this is an F tier? Like, this season was genuinely horrible in every way, shape, and form. First of all, the jungle biome just was not good to look at all, and the battle pass was dog shit. Like, there were like 2 good skins in that. The gameplay was literally nothing. The most boring shit ever. The storyline was non-existent. Literally, the season's only saving grace was the Jujutsu Kaisen collab with the Hollow Purple and no Borrow mythics, but that was quite literally the only good thing about this season, and it was not nearly enough to save the season from being one of the worst seasons of all time. And also, the quote-unquote summer event was literally just a spray-painted cliff. Like, what the hell was Epic cooking with this season? This is the most obvious F tier in the world. Chapter 4 Season 4 is next, and this season was also very hyped up by the community because it was pretty similar to the Chapter 2 Season 2 in terms of the season's theme. And it also brought back some of the old mythics that have not been in the game for years, like Kid's Charge Shotgun and Midas's Drum Gun. And this season actually had a pretty solid storyline, which is a first for this chapter. And I really like this season because of all the unique locations compared to everything else in Fortnite. But the unique locations were literally just copy and pasted of each other. But they were so cool. And the heist thing was cool with all the laser alarms and you having to steal the mythics. So I'm going to put the season in B tier because it was a really good season compared to the first 2 seasons, but it was a little worse, but still good. Next up is OG Fortnite, which is obviously S tier. I mean, come on, basically everything in the season was perfect, from the battle pass to the gameplay. Like, it was short, sweet, and simple. The battle pass was excellent with the remix skins, which were all great, with the best one being Omega Rock, which is one of the best skins in the entire game. And this season managed to almost perfectly replicate the feeling of OG Fortnite with some small gripes by not adding the old models of the weapons, which I didn't really care about, but I know some people did. But something I cared about was them just changing stuff about the season, which was just a dumb decision. Like, why did they shrink the ice biome? And why did they not add the incredible jungle biome from season 8? Like, genuinely, why? But besides that, the season was phenomenal, so S tier. Following up OG Fortnite was Chapter 5 Season 1, which had extremely high expectations, but I believe that it was pretty great, and it did fulfill the expectations. But for others, for some reason, they just think the season is bad, which I can't understand because the map was great and it was visually appealing, the gameplay was really fun, and the addition of the medallions was great, and I hope that those are brought back in Chapter 6. But some of the bad things about this season was the change to the running animation, which by itself wasn't really bad, but it's the fact that the movement speed was changed, and it just led to it absolutely getting dogged on by the entire community. But after they changed the speed back, the animation was fine. So another bad thing about the season was the frankly useless weapon mods. Like, tell me why they were exclusive to the Vault. Like, Epic genuinely believed that these were good. Like, gang, nobody used them after the first 2 weeks of the season unless they wanted to change the scope on their weapon. Also, the train was just missed potential because the loot was dog and it was just very bare bones and it felt unfinished for the entire chapter. But even with all these complaints, the season's gameplay was just so fun and engaging that I have to put this in A tier. Next up is Chapter 5 Season 2, which had such a good theme, but unfortunately they managed to ruin it by wasting all the potential it had by just refusing to add like a lot of Greek gods and their weapons, but instead they opted to remove them in the middle of the season in favor of the Avatar mythics, which just made the season completely stop for 2 weeks, and it turned it into an Avatar season. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed them, but why couldn't we just have both the Greek items and the Avatar items? at the same time. Anyways, the Greek mythics that were added were fun to use. Like the wings of Icarus were fun to fly around in, and the thunderbolt of Zeus felt really powerful without being completely overpowered. And the chain of Hades were just fun to play with and mess with your friends with. This season also added back LTMs after years of them being absent from the game, with the Floor is Lava Midas edition, which was the only thing I played for the entirety of its time in the game. It was just so addictive, so I'm gonna put the season in B tier. Next up is probably one of the most controversial seasons since Season X, Chapter 5 Season 3. Now this season was controversial due to the fact that the car meta was there, which I always liked overpowered stuff in this game, but this was just too much for me. But eventually I got used to it and started having some fun with them. But then Epic just decided to back out and nerf the cars to the ground, which just lets the feeling half-baked, you know? They should have just went all in with the cars, because nerfing them only made the people that did like it get mad, and the people who didn't like it still didn't like it, so it just made the season unlikable for everybody. And the season was just so repetitive because it was the same thing every game. You get the car, but put your preferred mods on and then drive around. That was it. Now they were planning on adding different car mods, which would have made the season 10 times more enjoyable, but after just seeing player reception at the start of the season, they just decided not to, which was one of the worst decisions that they could have made, and made the season feel half-baked. And halfway through the season they added the Magneto mythic, which I really liked, but then they added the Pirates of the Caribbean collab, which I just didn't care about at all. This season was an absolute mess, and they should have just committed to the theme, but they didn't, so D tier. Next up is Chapter 5 Season 4, which was another Marvel season, and the first one was absolutely amazing, so this season had to be the perfect setup to be peak, right? Well, unfortunately, Epic Games has no clue what they're doing, because they've decided to bring back none of the old Marvel mythics, besides maybe the Iron Man repulsors and the Unibeam, but they were so altered it's basically a different weapon. Like, genuinely Epic, what were you thinking? You even added back the old mythics to the files, but just decided to bring none of them back? Like, why? But let's focus on the stuff that they did add to the season, which were the War Machine Arsenal, Captain America's shield, the Doctor Doom stuff, along with the Iron Man arsenal later in the season. Do you notice a theme? Well, I'll tell you. Most of the items were extremely bland for a superhero season. Like in the first Marvel season, we had a bunch of crazy weapons that were extremely unique, but in this one, we just had a shield and some turrets. Like, what were they thinking? The only kind of cool one were the Doom and Iron Man ones, but the Doom mythics were mythics, so only one person could have them. And the Doom armor in the floating island thing only had a 5% chance to spawn for most of the season, which was so rare that most people only got to use it after they boosted it for like a week. And I am being pretty negative with the season. It wasn't that bad, it was just wasted potential. And this Fortnite was actually pretty good with the chainsaw and the best location in the entire game, Freaky Fields, so I'm giving the season a B tier. Next up is our current season, Chapter 2 Remix, which is such an overhated season. Like, guys, it's literally just Chapter 2 Season 2 but reskinned, and everyone is acting like they completely changed it. Like, if anything, the rappers make it more fun because it's something different and familiar at the same time, aka a remix, like the season is called. And the battle pass is pretty solid, with the standout being one ball, and it just feels like Chapter 2, and everyone is hating on the season for that. Like, they wanted it to be exactly like it. Like, you're just in denial and realizing that you didn't even like Chapter 2. Like, you're just blinded by nostalgia, guys. I am absolutely loving it, and I love Chapter 2 Season 2, which is the season Remix is mainly focused on, so I'm putting Remix in S tier. That is the end of ranking every Fortnite season part 3. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what your favorite Fortnite season is down below, and tell me what other tier lists I should do. But that's enough out of me. Goodbye.